When 9-year-old Amber's prosthetic arm was thrown in the trash by the head of her HOA, her confidence and her childhood were shattered. Karen Richardson called it an eyesore and hid behind neighborhood rules, showing no remorse for discarding something so personal and vital. But one security camera, a rising wave of support, and a little girl's quiet strength turned the story upside down. And you won't believe how justice came crashing down in the end, because this time, the world didn't look away. It was a quiet, bright Tuesday morning, the kind Melissa Bennett usually treasured. Spring had finally arrived in their Colorado suburb, the air crisp and sweet, with the smell of blooming dogwood trees. She stepped out barefoot onto the porch with a mug of coffee in one hand and the garden hose in the other. It was a simple ritual: water the lawn before the sun got too high, check the mail, wave at the neighbors. But this morning, something was wrong. The corner of the porch where Amber always left her sports prosthetic, empty. Melissa blinked, then blinked again. Maybe it was inside. Maybe her daughter brought it in after yesterday's practice. She set the hose down and hurried inside. She checked the bedroom, the laundry room, even the garage. Nothing. A cold prickle crept up her spine as she rushed back outside and opened the trash bin by the curb. It was completely empty. The garbage truck had already come. Across the street, standing beside her mailbox like a stone gargoyle, was Karen Richardson, the HOA president, immaculately dressed as always, in beige slacks and a pale lavender blouse, arms crossed tight over her chest. Her expression was unreadable. That same look she wore every time she issued a citation for non-regulation holiday lights or a garden gnome that violated decorative uniformity. Melissa felt something in her chest start to twist. She took a breath and asked as calmly as she could, "Hi, Karen. You didn't happen to see something on our porch this morning, did you? There was a prosthetic arm, my daughter's. It's not there anymore." Karen's lips barely moved. "Oh, you mean that plastic thing?" she said with the flat tone of someone talking about litter. "Yes, I threw it away." The words didn't register at first. Melissa took a half step forward. "You threw it away?" Karen gave a short, dismissive nod, her gaze never leaving Melissa's face. "It was an eyesore, just lying there like junk. This isn't a storage yard, Melissa. We have neighborhood standards." There was a silence that seemed to stretch for miles. Melissa's voice dropped. "That was my daughter's prosthetic arm." Karen didn't flinch. Her expression remained calm, if anything, vaguely annoyed. She raised one thin, judgmental eyebrow. "Well then, maybe keep medical equipment inside next time. Your porch isn't a hospital wing. We're trying to maintain appearances here." It took every ounce of restraint for Melissa not to scream. She stood there, fists clenched, watching Karen turn and walk back toward her front door like nothing had happened. No apology, no concern, no recognition that what she'd just done was anything more than tossing out a piece of trash. The spring air no longer smelled sweet. It felt tight, suffocating. Something precious had been taken, not just a physical object, but something deeper. And Melissa knew, in that moment, this was not going to end quietly. Melissa waited until after dinner. She knew it wasn't going to be an easy conversation. Amber was curled up on the couch in her usual spot, her legs tucked under a blanket, watching replays of last year's US Open on her tablet. She was quiet, always quiet, but there was a certain light that came into her eyes when she watched Serena serve. Melissa sat beside her. Amber looked up and smiled faintly. "Practice tomorrow?" she asked. Melissa's throat tightened. She paused, then said it as gently as she could. "Sweetheart, the tennis's arm, it's gone." Amber blinked once. Melissa tried again. Karen took it. She threw it in the trash this morning. The truck came before I noticed." Amber didn't speak. She slowly pulled her right hand out from under the blanket and stared at it. The place where the prosthetic normally attached, now bare, fragile, exposed. She turned her head slightly, not looking at Melissa, and in a voice so quiet it almost disappeared into the air, she whispered, "Does she think I'm disgusting?" Melissa's heart broke open. She reached for her daughter, but Amber leaned away. Not angrily, not dramatically, just a slow, subtle pull, like a flower closing in the dark. That night, Amber didn't eat much. She said she was tired and went to bed early. She didn't want a bedtime story, didn't want music, didn't want the window open like usual. She just lay there, her good hand under the pillow, her eyes open long after the lights were off. Over the next few days, things changed. She stopped asking about tennis. When Melissa tried to encourage her to go outside, Amber shook her head. "What if she sees me?" she said once. "What if she says something again?" She wouldn't touch her racket, wouldn't wear her backup prosthetic. It was bulky, outdated, uncomfortable. "I look like a robot," she muttered once, then hid it in the closet. Melissa tried everything: favorite snacks, movie nights, little notes in her lunchbox. But Amber just drifted further into silence. The only time she broke was when Melissa accidentally left the garage light on. Amber saw the glow and panicked, thought someone might be outside watching her. That night, Melissa sat alone in the kitchen, staring at her coffee, untouched. Her eyes were glassy, but she didn't cry. There wasn't room for that anymore, just this heavy, sickening truth. Her daughter had been taught, without a single curse word or bruise, that part of her body was offensive to someone. Later, when a local reporter came to cover the story, Melissa said something she hadn't even realized she felt until the words came out. She didn't just throw away a prosthetic. She threw away a piece of my daughter's identity. And in the pause that followed, the reporter's hands stopped typing. Because what do you write after that? Melissa stood in the fluorescent-lit hallway of the local police station, clutching a printed photo of Amber in her tennis gear, the prosthetic clearly visible on her left arm. It was all she had to prove what had been taken. The officer at the front desk took down her statement with the detached efficiency of someone used to car break-ins and noise complaints. When she finished describing the events, the conversation, the missing prosthetic, Karen's admission, he gave her a polite but tired look. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but unless there's clear evidence of malicious intent, this might be difficult to pursue legally. Could have been a misunderstanding." Melissa felt her stomach turn. "A misunderstanding?" she repeated quietly. The officer shrugged. "People throw things out all the time. Unless she knew exactly what it was, it may not rise to the level of a criminal offense." Melissa stared at him, her voice suddenly tight. "It cost $12,000. The man gave her a sympathetic nod, but his eyes said everything. They weren't going to fight this battle for her. That night, Melissa sat on the couch with her laptop open, Amber already asleep in her room. The weight of the day settled around her like damp wool. She could have left it alone, could have let the story end there, just another thing that wasn't worth the trouble. But she couldn't. She opened to Facebook. Her hands trembled slightly as she began to type. She wrote not just about the prosthetic, but about what it meant, what it represented, the violation, the silence, the look on her daughter's face. She posted it with one sentence at the end. "We don't throw people away." She closed the laptop, didn't even stay to see the first comments. By morning, it had already spread. Her inbox was flooded. Some messages were short. "This is disgusting. She needs to be fired." Others were long and raw. Stories from parents of children with disabilities, people who had faced HOA harassment, veterans whose prosthetics were mocked, kids bullied at school for being different. Melissa sat in the kitchen reading them, tears falling silently. Not from sadness, though there was plenty of that, but from something else, recognition. She wasn't alone. And then came a message that changed everything. It was from a neighbor a few houses down, someone Melissa barely knew, just a polite wave from across the street. The message was short. "Hey, I have a Ring camera. It might have caught something. Want me to check?" Melissa froze. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then finally, she typed back, "Yes, please." And just like that, the wall began to crack. The footage wasn't high definition. The angle was slightly off-center. The lighting was morning dull, and the wind occasionally distorted the audio. But none of that mattered, because what it showed was undeniable. Karen Richardson, HOA president, stepping deliberately onto Melissa Bennett's porch. She paused for a moment, looked left, looked right, scanning, calculating. Then, with gloved hands, she reached down and picked up something from just beside the welcome mat. A sleek, purple and black prosthetic arm. No hesitation, no confusion. She turned, walked calmly across the yard, and without so much as a second glance, dropped it into the open trash bin by the curb. The lid closed with a solid, casual thud. The video was just under 30 seconds, but it hit like a detonation. Melissa uploaded it to Facebook with no caption, no emotion, just the video. Within hours, it was everywhere. Shared, stitched, reposted, subtitled, translated. Local news picked it up that evening. By Thursday, it was trending on Twitter. By Friday, it was on national morning talk shows under titles like HOA President Caught Tossing Child's Prosthetic Arm, Disabled Girl's Device Thrown Out in HOA Dispute. And by the end of the week, the view count had passed 5 million. The reaction was immediate and merciless. Strangers were furious. Parents were horrified. Advocates for disabled rights, athletes with prosthetics, teachers, veterans, nurses, they all spoke up. Comments flooded every corner of the internet. She knew exactly what she was doing. This is ableism, plain and simple. How do you accidentally throw away someone's body part? Karen tried to fight the wave. She agreed to a brief interview with a local station, seated in a well-decorated living room, porcelain dog statues behind her. She wore a pearl necklace and a tight smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. It was just lying there, she said, voice clipped. I didn't recognize it. I assumed it was some sort of toy. Honestly, if I'd known... She trailed off. The interviewer raised an eyebrow. Did you ask before throwing it away? Karen's lips pressed into a thin line. That's not how the HOA works. But the internet wasn't interested in excuses. People had seen the footage. They'd heard the tone in her voice from Melissa's recounting of that morning. They knew the type, the rule enforcer, the dignity police, the woman who never apologized, but always explained. And now, the world had seen the moment the mask slipped. No confusion, no panic, no regret. Just a calm, steady hand lifting a child's lifeline and tossing it away like garbage. The court of public opinion had rendered its verdict, and it was brutal. Melissa didn't sleep much the night she launched the petition. She had sat alone at the dining table long after Amber had gone to bed, the screen of her laptop casting a bluish glow across the paperwork still piled from the insurance company. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsure of what to say that hadn't already been said in frustration, in pain, in disbelief. In the end, she wrote simply. She described what happened. She described Amber. She described how it felt to stand there, in her own yard, and hear someone call her daughter's prosthetic an eyesore. There was no anger in the words, only clarity. She ended the post with a quiet sentence. We are not asking for pity. We are asking for justice. And then she pressed post, closed the laptop, and let the silence return to the house. By morning, the petition had 2,148 signatures. By lunch, it was nearly 7,000. By evening, it had passed 20,000 and showed no signs of slowing. Melissa stared at the screen as the number ticked upward in real time. It felt surreal, almost mechanical. Until she opened the comment section. That's where it became real. People weren't just signing. They were writing, sharing, opening their own wounds, turning Amber's story into something collective. My daughter was denied swimming access at a community pool because her leg braces carried the other kids. My HOA tried to fine us for installing a ramp for my mom, said it violated uniformity. You're not alone. We see you. We see your daughter, and we're standing with you. Melissa sat at the kitchen counter, scrolling, tears gathering quietly beneath her eyes. She didn't feel like a victim anymore. She felt seen. By the third day, the petition crossed 30,000 signatures, and then the messages changed, from stories to offers of help. A lawyer from Denver reached out, Claire Martin, civil rights attorney, calm, direct, empathetic in a way that didn't feel rehearsed. I specialize in ADA violations, she said on the phone. What Karen did isn't just cruel, it's illegal. Let me help you, for free. Melissa hesitated for only a moment. Yes, she said, voice shaking. Please. Around the same time, someone Melissa had never met, an elementary school teacher in New York, started a GoFundMe with the title, Help Amber Get Her Arm Back. No viral tricks, no flashy videos. Just a photo of Amber in her tennis uniform and a simple sentence. This little girl lost her prosthetic because of hate. Let's show her the world has more love than that. Within 36 hours, it was fully funded. $12,750 raised. Donations came with messages. Amber is a fighter. My daughter says she wants to be just like her. She's stronger than most adults I know. Some people sent $2, others sent $500, but the weight of it wasn't in the money. It was in the faith. That evening, Melissa found Amber in the garage. It was cold, the concrete floor bare under her socks, but Amber didn't seem to notice. She had opened her old tennis bag, pulled out the heavy backup prosthetic they hadn't used in months. It was outdated, stiff, and more of a museum piece than a tool, but she had it on. She was bouncing a ball against the wall. The rhythm was clumsy. Her balance was off, but she kept going. Melissa stood in the doorway without a word, just watching. Amber didn't look up, but she spoke. Mom? Yeah, sweetheart? When the new one comes, do you think I could paint it purple? Melissa felt the breath catch in her throat. She nodded, eyes burning. Any color you want. Amber gave a small smile. The ball bounced again, firmer, straighter, more confident. That night, when Melissa tucked her in, Amber whispered one last thing before falling asleep. I think I want to go back to practice soon. And just like that, something shifted. Not because the world had suddenly become fair, but because a little girl had decided it wouldn't stop her. And this time, she wasn't bouncing a ball alone. She had thousands behind her. The courthouse smelled faintly of old wood and polished tile. It was quiet in a way that felt unnatural, like the building was holding its breath. Melissa sat in the second row, hands clenched tightly in her lap, trying to steady the rhythm of her breathing. Amber sat beside her, small and solemn, in a pale blue dress and her new prosthetic. She didn't fidget. She didn't look around. She simply watched the woman at the front of the room, Karen Richardson, still perfectly coiffed, still composed. But something about her posture had shifted. Her spine seemed stiffer, her jaw clenched just a little tighter. This wasn't a neighborhood meeting. This wasn't her turf. This was a courtroom. When the judge entered, the room rose in unison, then settled into a tense, expectant silence. The prosecution read the charges aloud. Destruction of medically necessary equipment. Value $12,347. Intent to interfere with accessibility and function. 1 count. Felony. There was a rustle in the gallery, the weight of those words landing like a sudden gust. Karen's attorney stood. Your Honor, my client maintains that this was a tragic misunderstanding. The item in question was left unattended on a porch. Miss Richardson mistook it for refuse. Then Karen spoke. Her voice, carefully modulated, echoed slightly in the chamber. It looked like junk. I had no idea it was medical. No apology, no acknowledgement. Just that same flat, cold dismissal. The judge didn't respond right away. Instead, he reached down, picked up a photo from the stack on his bench, and held it up for the courtroom to see. Amber in her tennis uniform, standing on the court, racket in hand, her prosthetic arm visible, unmistakable, an extension of her body, of her spirit. The judge looked directly at Karen. His voice was calm, but it cut like glass. Miss Richardson, this, he tapped the image once gently, is not junk. This is a child's body. You didn't just throw away an object. You removed part of someone's ability to function in the world. Karen's eyes dropped for the first time. She didn't speak. Silence fell over the room again, but it wasn't helpless anymore. It was deliberate, exposing. The kind of silence that says, "We see you now." Outside the courthouse, a small group of reporters waited. A few neighbors, too. Some curious, some supportive, some just there to see if it was real. Melissa walked past them without saying a word. Her hand rested on Amber's shoulder as they made their way to the car. Amber looked up at her and said quietly, "He believed me." Melissa smiled. He did, and soon others will too. For the first time, justice wasn't just something they were begging for. It was something on the record, and that changed everything. The new prosthetic arrived in a matte black case, sleek, lightweight, precision-designed just for Amber. She opened it slowly, her fingers brushing the smooth surface. It was painted in her favorite shades, purple and teal, swirling together like ocean and sky. And just above the wrist socket, etched in silver script, "Not broken, built different." Amber didn't speak. She just put it on, adjusted the strap, turned her wrist, then quietly, "Can we go hit some balls?" Back on the court, it felt like no time had passed. She served, missed, served again, hit the net, then again. And then, crack. The ball flew clean over and landed just inside the line. Melissa stood on the sidelines, barely moving, watching, feeling her heart unfold. Amber had come back. A week later, she qualified for regionals. Her coach pulled Melissa aside. She's sharper now, more locked in. Like she's not just playing tennis anymore. She's playing with purpose. At the tournament, Amber stepped onto the court, visor low, new arm shining. People noticed, not out of curiosity, but admiration. She lost the first set, regained the second, pushed through the third, match point. Silence. Then, serve, rally, swing, win. The crowd stood, not in sympathy, but in awe. Karen wasn't there. Melissa barely thought of her, because this moment wasn't about revenge. It was about strength, reclamation, wholeness. Amber walked off the court, cheeks flushed, breath steady. "I did it," she said. Melissa smiled. "No, sweetheart, you rose." It happened on a rainy Tuesday. Karen Richardson was officially removed from the HOA board by unanimous vote. No speeches, no confrontation, just a quiet procedural email sent out to all residents. Effective immediately, Miss Richardson will no longer serve in any HOA capacity. She didn't fight it, not really. There were murmurs that she considered filing a defamation lawsuit. Her lawyer requested the video footage as part of a preliminary review. The next day, the suit was dropped. No explanation given. A week later, a for sale sign appeared on her lawn. It stood there like a final ironic monument, pristine, untouched. No one vandalized it. No one had to. But everyone saw it, and everyone knew what it meant. She moved out quietly. No goodbye party, no farewell brunch, no boxes carried out by laughing neighbors, just a moving truck in the early morning fog. In her absence, something shifted. At the next HOA meeting, held without tension for the first time in years, a motion passed to revise the association guidelines. The new clause was brief but powerful. No resident shall be penalized, fined, or otherwise reprimanded for the visible presence of medically necessary devices or accessibility modifications. It didn't undo what had happened, but it made sure it wouldn't happen again. Meanwhile, Amber received an unexpected invitation from the principal of the local elementary school. Would she come speak to the fourth graders? Just a few words about strength, about resilience? Amber hesitated. She was used to playing, not talking, but Melissa gently encouraged her. So she agreed. She stood at the front of the small auditorium, a little stiff at first. Her new arm gleamed beneath the lights. The microphone squeaked. The room fell quiet. And then she said, "What someone throws away doesn't define your worth." A pause. "You define that yourself." There was silence. And then applause. Not from obligation, but from the hearts of children who understood more than they could say. The woman who once ruled with fear had left town unnoticed, but the girl she tried to silence? She stayed. She spoke. She grew. And that was the real legacy. Life didn't return to normal. Not exactly. There was no sudden moment where everything healed, no single day when the past was erased. Scars don't vanish just because someone apologizes, especially when they never really did. Amber still had quiet days. Days when she didn't want to go to practice. Days when she felt like all eyes were on her arm instead of her game. Sometimes Melissa would find her sitting silently in her room, eyes unfocused, fingers tracing the smooth edge of her prosthetic. Not out of vanity, but thought, memory, doubt. And Melissa, she still had nights when her mind betrayed her. She'd lie awake long after Amber had gone to sleep, staring at the ceiling, and the scene would replay. Karen's voice, casual and cold. It was an eyesore. But those words no longer owned her. They no longer echoed like they used to. They had become something else now, something Melissa had learned to carry without letting it break her. Because the world hadn't become perfect, but they had become stronger, There was a different energy around them now, in the way Amber walked through the school gates with her head a little higher, in the way neighbors waved longer, smiled wider, in the way the story had quietly bled beyond the neighborhood into inboxes, news feeds, living rooms across the country. They had become part of something. It wasn't fame, and it wasn't justice in the legal sense. It was something quieter, more powerful, proof. Proof that when one person speaks, others listen, that when one girl refuses to shrink, others begin to stretch, that a fight born in one cul-de-sac could ripple into classrooms, courtrooms, hearts. The letter came on a Wednesday, just a plain white envelope, a city in Ohio as the return address. Inside was one handwritten page, folded twice. The penmanship was neat, careful, each word clearly chosen. It was from a mother. My daughter has worn a back brace since she was 6. She's 10 now. For years, she's tried to hide it under baggy sweatshirts. She refused to wear dresses. She hated mirrors. Kids said she looked like a robot. One boy called her Transformer Girl. But last week, she saw Amber's story, the video, the match. And something changed. She stood in front of the mirror, looked herself in the eye, and said, "She's not hiding, and neither will I." She wore her brace to school the next day, wore a skirt too. Nobody teased her. Some even said she looked cool. She stood up for herself, Melissa, because your daughter stood up first. Melissa read the letter slowly, as if each line carried weight. And it did. When she finished, she folded it gently, with care, like something sacred. She didn't cry, not immediately. She just closed her eyes and let the silence around her feel full, not empty. Outside the window, Amber was in the driveway, hitting a tennis ball against the garage again and again, her body in rhythm, fluid, strong, certain. Her new arm moved as if it had always been part of her, not a replacement, a continuation. Melissa watched her for a long time and smiled. Karen had thrown something in the trash, a piece of plastic, a tool, a lifeline. She thought she was discarding something broken, something lesser, something unwanted. But she didn't destroy anything. Instead, she lit a fuse that burned through silence, through shame, through the quiet corners where people hide what makes them different. And from that fuse, something else emerged, a movement, a message, a girl who would not be reduced. Amber didn't just recover, she rebuilt. And what came back was not the same child who stood frozen on that porch weeks ago. What came back was a girl made of nerve and courage, of grace and fire. Not in spite of what happened, but because she refused to let it define her. Not broken, built different, not silenced, not small, not trash, stronger than plastic, stronger than rules, stronger than fear, stronger than anyone had imagined. And her voice, once a whisper, was now an echo in the hearts of others miles away, who finally stood up straight and said, "Me too."